If not, we will destroy this place, the general shouted loudly. Inside, Lois was sweating profusely, unsure whether to come out or not, silently thinking, what should I do? I can't continue avoiding like this. Meanwhile, outside, the old general had run out of patience, drawing his sword and preparing for battle, saying, I have warned clearly, whatever happens next is your responsibility. Then he swung his sword towards the group of people where Lois stood. Boom! There was an explosion, the place shattered into pieces, and fragments flew everywhere. Fairy Finn was blown away several meters, feeling sorry for her. After the smoke cleared, they slowly appeared. Seeing that it was just 3 kids. The old general couldn't help but be surprised, saying, What? Children? While the Duchess exclaimed, Oh my God, are there surviving children? Hearing this, Lois improvised, thinking, Good, that's right. Then suddenly, he burst into tears, while the 2 little devils behind him looked at Lois wide-eyed, not understanding what was happening. Lois turned around and whispered, You guys should cry too, hurry up. After that statement, the 2 seemed to have a sudden realization and began crying loudly, adding in phrases like, Oh Mom, and Dad, which made the scene even more heartbreaking. I could barely stand to watch it. The Duchess, witnessing this, couldn't contain her emotions and approached them tenderly, saying, Oh, how pitiful. Seeing this, the 2 little devils also ran to her, hugging her tightly and crying even louder, Sob, sob, it's really terrible. Lois thought, these 2, if they weren't dragons, they could probably be Hollywood actors. Lois stood there observing with a bewildered expression, realizing that these 2 little devils seemed smarter than she had thought. Were the silly things they did every day just an act? Then the Duke asked, Are you the only survivors? Lois nodded and said, Yes, sir. The Duke continued, You must have been through a lot. From behind, the Duchess interjected, Sir, do you think we could take these children back to the castle? The Duke sighed and said, Well, I guess there's no other way. Then the order was given to put these children on the carriage and get ready to return to the castle. Lois, bewildered, asked, Oh, are you taking us along too? Before waiting for an answer, Lois was dragged away by 2 soldiers as if she were a pig. Fairy Butterfly Finn, lucky enough not to be taken along as he had been blown away earlier, stood there looking helpless. After a while, they arrived at the castle and were soaking in the hot spring. Lois sighed and thought, Ah, how did I end up like this? I thought we could escape the situation by pretending to be pitiful, but it seems like those 2 are too good at acting. I don't know they could be so kind, but whatever happened has happened. Now I have to observe the situation and wait for the right opportunity. While contemplating, there was a sudden call, Lois. Turning around, Lois saw the 2 little devils splashing water at her, laughing mischievously when they hit her face. They said, Lois's hair looks funny. Lois had a helpless expression, thinking, I'm relieved to see them so carefree. Suddenly, there was a voice behind, Oh, how cute. Look at their fair and smooth skin, yes, they're indeed adorable. You can call me Nuna, all right. Now, let's change clothes and go eat. After that, they all finished bathing and eating, then walked to the dining room, where the Duchess had been waiting. Seeing them arrive, she exclaimed, Look, the children have arrived. Oh, I almost didn't recognize you. You must be hungry, come quickly and eat, as she gestured invitingly. Before them was a table filled with delicious dishes, and they rushed over, each sitting in a corner and eating voraciously, as if they had been starving for days. Lois sat there thinking, why do these 2 adapt so quickly? Anyway, we'll probably have to leave here soon. But I can't act hastily because anything could happen, especially to Finn. Where are you now, Finn? Meanwhile, Fairy Butterfly Finn was flying at breakneck speed, thinking, the carriage must have gone in this direction. I need to find Lois's owner as soon as possible. If I hadn't been taken away by those snow eagles, I wouldn't have lost track of Lois's owner. Please wait a little longer, Lois's owner is coming here, she said as she continued to fly at the speed of light. That evening, Lois was walking along the castle corridor, probably heading to the bathroom, when she heard a conversation coming from a room. "We can't keep these children with us forever, I know, but when I look at those children, I can hear the voice of our child, Rinu." It turned out to be the Duke and Duchess conversing. The Duke continued, "My love, I understand your emotions, but bonding our deceased child with these children is not right. Stop it, let Rinu go." Upon hearing this, the Duchess shouted, "How can you ask a mother to forget her child?" Outside the door, Lois heard everything, thinking, "It seems she has recently lost her child, and that's why she treats us strangely well." Suddenly, she grabbed her husband's hand and exclaimed, "Kanta, please, let's adopt these children as our sons and daughters." Lois was startled after hearing that. She then returned to her room and sat on the rocking chair, closing her eyes to contemplate. Although we haven't known each other for long, why would they consider adopting us? The Duke of Canberg is a member of the most powerful royal family in the region, ruling over the winter continent. Becoming the adopted child of such a duke would mean I could immediately become an important figure in this country. Surely, it must be a difficult proposal even for the duke's wife. Perhaps the pain of losing a child is too great. It might be better for me to leave before things become more complicated. But seeing them like that makes me feel conflicted. I wish Finn were here now so we could discuss together. It seemed Lois's wish had come true as outside the window, there was Fairy Finn pressing against the glass, tapping gently. Immediately, Lois opened the window for her to fly in, and they greeted each other joyfully. Then Lois said, "You fool, where have you been missing all this time? From now on, you must always stay by my side." Fairy Finn, upon hearing this, cried and apologized, promising never to leave Lois again. At that moment, the two children appeared out of nowhere and, upon seeing Finn, exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, is that Finn? And, Finn, you're back." Then, all three of them embraced each other happily, laughing as if there had been no separation at all. Fairy Finn wiped her tears with her hand and said, "Now that we're back together, we can continue our journey." Lois then crossed her arms and said, yes. "But actually, I'm considering staying here a little longer." Fairy Finn asked curiously, "Why? Can't we leave right now?" Lois turned away and replied, "Well, it's because they have been very kind to us, and I heard that the Duke and Duchess recently lost their child. So, I think it might be awkward if we suddenly leave. Honestly, our situation isn't urgent, and we can gather more information about the winter continent." Upon hearing Lois's explanation, Fairy Finn thought to herself, "Usually, Master Lois is very calm, but in situations like this, she seems vulnerable. However, seeing her express such sincere emotions makes me want to serve her even more." Then continued, "If Miss Lois feels awkward, should we do this?" "What's that?" Throughout history, dragons have always valued their first encounter in some way. The Duke and Duchess are also Miss Lois's first acquaintances, aren't they? That's correct. So, could you leave a simple gift and go? For example, if the issue is about not having children, it could be resolved if they have a child, right? Lois then placed her hand on her head and sighed, "It's easier said than done. What I mean is creating a child isn't something easily achievable." After saying that, Lois suddenly came up with something, then she continued, "But wait, perhaps we don't need to immediately give them a baby, do we? When their child is born, we could disappear suddenly without any problem." "That's a brilliant idea, Finn. So, let's prepare for the next step." Then later, the Duchess was sitting on the balcony enjoying her tea when suddenly she heard the voices of the two mischievous children calling out, "Come play with us." The Duchess turned back gently and said, "Oh my, all right, are you two feeling bored? Let's go play or have some cookies then." The twins laughed in unison and responded, "Hee, sounds good." Meanwhile, Lois was standing behind the door with a mischievous grin and said, Oh, I trust you both, my little twins." Meanwhile, in the hallway, the Duke was discussing something with his subordinates while holding a piece of paper. Suddenly, Lois appeared in front of him with sparkling eyes and a saintly face. He asked, Is there something wrong, my child? Lois replied, no, sir. He continued, and what about your friends? Lois added, they're playing with the Duchess, sir. He asked further, aren't you afraid of me? Lois replied confidently, no, not at all. He thought to himself, normally, children would be afraid and wouldn't dare to approach me, but this one is different, so peculiar, almost like. Then the image of a child appeared as the Duke looked at Lois, whom I believe must be his son, Rinu. Surprised, he picked up Lois and said with a smile, well then, would you like to play with me? Lois eagerly exclaimed, hooray, yes. They walked together along the hallway, leaving the subordinates standing there bewildered. They remarked, it's been so long, hasn't it? Since the Duke smiled like that. That's exactly what I was going to say, replied the other. That evening, they all sat around the table chatting. Lois spoke up, indeed, we are like precious gems now. So, have you both successfully completed your mission? The twins reported. Khan spoke first, yes, Captain. Kaney added, we had a wonderful afternoon having tea and cookies with the Duchess. Lois nodded approvingly, well done, well done. Then Lois turned to Fairy Finn, and you? Fairy Finn, wearing glasses and holding a paper, responded, Duke Canberg wakes up at 5 a.m. to start his work. Around noon, after lunch, he continues with his remaining tasks and engages in training after dinner. The average bedtime for him is around 11 p.m., and he contacts his wife about 5 times a day. The report ends here. Lois listened and then closed her eyes, saying, very good. Then Kaney spoke up, but Lois immediately interrupted, saying, shoo, it's Captain, not Lois. Kaney quickly corrected himself, saying, our Captain, we've done what you said, but what exactly are we doing? Khan chimed in, exactly, how does having children relate to playing with the lady of the house? After hearing their questions, Lois shook her head, sighed, and said, sigh, that's why I can't work with children. Listen, to conceive a child, the relationship between a couple needs to be intimate. The Duke and Duchess are currently emotionally distant due to the loss of their child. If they spend time laughing and playing with adorable children like us, will it help uplift their spirits? The sorrow from losing a child will gradually fade away, and step by step, they will become more comfortable with each other, naturally. At this point, Lois's face looked truly mischievous, and he chuckled, saying, perhaps a new chapter of history will be written tonight. After saying that, the two curious kids asked, why write history at night? Is it better to do so at night? I don't understand. After hearing them, Lois turned to look at them with a half eye and said, there are things children don't need to know. Then he took out a book titled, 1000 Variations of Ancient Formulas for Brewing Pills, and continued, so now let's start practicing for real. As for this chapter, please leave your comments below, and I hope you subscribe to the channel, so I have the motivation to release the next chapter soon. Thank you all very much, bye bye.